Welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, the official podcast of Ryan Johnson Ministries. This podcast was created for the purpose of equipping others for the advancement of the kingdom of God. We hope that you enjoy this episode and encourage you to subscribe to the Blacksmith Chronicles today. For more information about Ryan Johnson Ministries, please visit www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us.
Hey guys, welcome to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. This week, I'm very excited about a first-time guest on the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, a phenomenal, a powerful, real-life story, but a very much needed topic in our hour, in this culture and generation that we're a part of right now. So I won't even wait, delay, or anything possible. I'll just bring on this next guest to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast, Miss Kelly Lester. Kelly, thank you so much for being a part of the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate you asking me on.
I'm excited to take this journey with you. Your story really is a very interesting story, just on the nature of that, but it's powerful what God brought you from, what God brought you through, and what God is continuing to do in your life. So for those that may be listening or watching this episode, they're saying, Kelly Lester, who is that? So give us a little bit of a background in who Kelly is.
Yeah, Ryan. So I always tell people there's not really anything that you could say you've been through or experienced that I haven't. At 3, I was molested by a family member. At 12, I was raped. At 15, I had my first abortion. Those years between elementary school and high school, I was bullied and picked on and teased to the point where I wouldn't wear the same outfit twice because I knew how they were going to treat me. And then at 15, I had my first abortion. I walked in a straight A student, a nationally ranked tennis player, a regular church attender. We, were there every time the doors were open, had home group in my house. And I walked out and walked away from God, walked away from tennis, and barely ended up graduating high school. I did go to college because I had early acceptance, quickly began using drugs, alcohol, and then eventually ended up selling drugs, running drugs for the Puerto Rican mafia. And traveling up and down the East Coast selling drugs. And then with that lifestyle, comes every kind of depravity you can imagine, from homosexuality to pornography to, eating disorders, domestic violence, every kind of thing, that you could talk about, I experienced. And in the midst of that, I was selling drugs and working as a bartender and looking for a way to escape the craziness of that lifestyle. And so I looked for a new job, and I found that my local abortion clinic was hiring. Now, I didn't know that at the time because it was advertised as a women's clinic hiring for a receptionist. But when I went to the address, I realized that it was where I had had one of my abortions. And I got hired right then and there on the spot, and worked for the next 9 months as a receptionist in this abortion facility, and saw behind the scenes of the abortion industry and what really happens there, and how, everything is done to manipulate and control the scenario to cause women to choose abortion. It is not, about giving her choices. It is not about supporting her decision. We were told to assume that when she came through the doors, she was looking to have an abortion, and to do everything possible to steer her in that direction. And that included editing magazines. So anything that might cue her to want to have a child, or to be in a relationship, like a minivan or an engagement ring ad, anything like that, we would remove it because we didn't want to trigger that maternal instinct in her. And at the time, in the state that I live in, it was a 24-hour waiting period. So a lot of times the boyfriend or the husband would bring her for her first appointment. And when he was in the waiting room, we would turn the heat up super hot or the air conditioning very cold, because we wanted him to get up and leave. Because when she came out, we did not want him there waiting for her. Because if he won't even support you for this, what makes you think he would support you for having a child? And so you hear that and you think, gosh, that's so manipulative. But remember, I was that girl. I was that woman. And it was phrased to me of, we want to make this as easy as possible for her. And so that's what I did. My other job was the recovery room. And so when women would have their abortions, I would oversee the recovery room. And the number of women that were hemorrhaging from their procedure is what eventually made me leave, because I realized that we were not just ending their pregnancy that day, but we were potentially ending their possibility of ever becoming a mother. And that was something I couldn't deal with, because I went there to help people. And so I went back into the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol. I would love to tell you that that made me, pro-life, because I saw what was really going on, but I was still lost and still confused, and, still felt like there weren't a lot of answers out there. And so I went back to the drugs and alcohol. That continued on for several more years. I did have several more abortions. And it all concluded in New Orleans. I was living with a boyfriend, and we had decided that the relationship wasn't working out. It was a very abusive relationship. We fought a lot. And so we went out to party to celebrate me going home, I guess. I'm not even sure why we went out, but we did. And while we were out, we got into a fight. And we came home. He left before I did. I came home after him, and the fight escalated. And there was a point in the fight where we had ripped the door off the hinges, and there was a 2x4 from the frame laying on the ground. And he's kneeling over top of me with the board in his hand, and he goes to hit me over the head with it. And as he's mid-swing, he drops the board. He continues to punch me in the face several times. Blood goes everywhere, and he realizes that he, had actually really hurt me. And so the fight stops. Well, the next morning, I wake up, and I had text messages and phone calls from my father 1,200 miles away. And I didn't answer them because, your dad is the last person you want to talk to after a night like that. And then 24 hours later, I packed up all my belongings and drove back home to where my dad was. And as I get there, he gets out and he sees me. Now I have 2 big black swollen eyes. My nose is flat and crooked. And he starts crying. And I say, "Oh, Dad, don't worry. I was in a car accident." And he looks at me and he says, "2 nights ago, I was asleep. And in the middle of the night, I was awoken, and I had a vision of you laying dead on the floor with your head split wide open. And so I began to pray." And I realized that the moment when my boyfriend had dropped that board was the moment when my father had been awoken by the Lord and began to pray with me. And so that pretty drastically changed my life. It did take a couple of weeks of me getting sober and, getting my head straight, and was sitting in the front row of my dad's church because he was a pastor. And at the end of it, he gave an altar call, as he usually did. And I heard, as clearly as I've ever heard anything, the audible voice of the Lord. And he said, "Have you had enough?" And it wasn't angry. It wasn't disappointed. It was my Father God, brokenhearted, asking me, was I ready to come home? It was like the prodigal son. And I said, "But God, I've been through this and I've done that," and all the reasons why he couldn't love me. And he said, again, very audibly, "If you follow me, I will make beauty from ashes." Now, I did not realize that that was scripture, but Isaiah 61 very clearly uses that verse. And I then, of course, said, "Well, but God, how are you going to make beautiful all of these things?" And he didn't answer me, because sometimes he speaks to us and other times he speaks through being silent. But then over the next 15 years, that is literally what he has done. He has taken every area of my life where the enemy tried to harm me, tried to destroy me, and he has turned it beautiful. And in some of those areas, how do you make beautiful being molested at 3 or raped at 12? You really can't, except I share my story. And when I do, I get to bring hope to other people who've been through that, or parents who have a child who's lost and they're going through the same thing that my parents were going through with me. And so every time it's like, okay, that's how the Lord makes it beautiful. And so that's what he has done for the last 15 years, incredibly enough.
It is. It's remarkable the amount of life experiences that you have went through from early life and onward. But I do want to, there's so much I want to unpack on this. But I want to go back. And if I'm not mistaken, you said at 15 years old, you were pregnant, and that's when you went and had the abortion. I want to know, what is the process of that 15-year-old mind to make that decision? Is it just, this is the best thing for me? Is this, I'm scared, I'm terrified? Is it more simply out of fear? Is it what exactly does a 15-year-old mind truly comprehend in that decision making when it comes to an abortion?
Yeah, I think, Ryan, it's all of those things, quite honestly. And now remember, not to age myself, but I guess to age myself, that was 30 years ago. And so the abortion discussion and the abortion debate has changed dramatically over the last 30 years. I mean, I grew up in a home, again, a Christian, but I had never heard the word abortion. And so I definitely did not understand all the ins and outs of what it entailed. However, I did very much know that I was pregnant. And I did very much know that I was pregnant with a child. I say this often, people don't have an abortion because they have a kidney stone. They have an abortion because they're pregnant. And they don't think that they're pregnant with a kitten. They know that they're pregnant with a child. Now we could debate, what stage of development, and do they have cognizance, and do they have sentience, and, is it fully, there's all those things, but they know that they're pregnant with a child. And I very much knew that. I did not understand the consequences that were going to happen. I did not understand the repercussions that were going to happen. When I went for my abortion, no one explained to me, hey, there may be a season where you feel relief, but afterwards there is going to be a season where you're going to feel loss, or these are possible side effects that could happen from it. These are possible damages or dangers that could happen from it. No one explained that to me. And 30 years ago, when I walked into that clinic, there was no one outside offering assistance. There were no pregnancy resources out there saying that they could help. There were no crisis lines like LoveLine or Options Line or the helpline that, CareNet and Heartbeat have. There was none of that out there. And so I knew that I was 15. I was a straight A student. I was a churchgoer. My parents were leaders in the church. And I did not want to bring that shame or that embarrassment to my parents. I also did not want to end the possibility of me going to college. I already had acceptance to college and wanted to continue in that future and didn't know how that was going to be possible. And there was no one giving me any other options and saying, hey, this is possible. There was no one saying, hey, if you do this, yes, you will not have a child, but it may change your life forever, because statistically, women who have abortions are more likely to have suicide, or more likely to have drug addiction, or more likely to have alcoholism, are more likely to fall into violent relationships. There was no one telling me that. It was just, you're 15, you're too young to do this. This is the best thing for you. It's quick and easy and painless, and you'll be done with before you know it. And so that's what I did, and now the dialogue has changed a little bit to where, honestly, having an abortion for many women is being spoken as a rite to passage. It's like, this is part of growing up as a woman. You have an abortion. 1 in 3 women have abortions, and it's part of your empowerment and your, growing up and being a woman. And so it's, where before it wasn't really talked about, now it's actually promoted and championed. And like, this is a good thing for you to do. And certainly the best thing for you to do if you're 15 or 16 or 17 or 19 or in college or starting your career. But no one is talking about the emotional, mental toll that it has on you. And I can tell you, Ryan, being somebody who worked in the recovery room, no matter whether the women who came in to have their abortions were coming in shouting their abortion and like, yes, I can't wait to do this, or if the woman was coming in with 2 kids, really, really conflicted about her decision, in the recovery room, every woman was sad. Most women were crying. I often call it the saddest place on earth, because she knew and knows what she did. She knows that she killed her child. Now, she may have felt like it was her only option. She may have felt like it was her best option, but she knows what she had did. And there is a sorrow, and there is a regret, and there is a sadness that happens because of that.
It's one of those things that you said that now kind of the culture has produced this is the thing that you need to do in order to be accepted, in order to to be a woman, point blank. Why do you think that has become sort of the forte of what abortion is versus 30 years ago? Why is I'm trying to wrap my mind, because here's, as you're talking, one of the things, I'm only coming from a male perspective. I have no true understanding of what a woman would endure or go through. My wife, her mother, at 15 got pregnant and had an abortion, and then gets pregnant again with my wife. But thankfully, because of that repercussion that she had endured from the first one, she chose not to abort my wife. And so I have that limited understanding. And as you were speaking, I began to think of a very, very popular movie. I'm not as old as I think that I am, but I'm definitely not as young as I once was. I can remember as a younger kid watching Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And, that was a very popular movie and stuff, and thinking nothing about the movie. And then years go by and realizing what the end of that movie really is, in no uncertain terms, promoting and making it acceptable and stuff, and kind of having that moment of going, gosh, I didn't realize that was kind of the theme of this movie a lot of times, and just being shocked. And so now when I'm hearing you say that, and that's going through my mind, I'm sitting here going, how has this become the standard of the culture to say, I got an abortion, I'm a woman, I'm this and that? How does that mindset change over a period of time to where we are now?
Well, it changes little by little. First off, they say, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And that has definitely been what's happened. It used to be the mantra was safe, rare, and legal. And now it has changed to on demand without apology. And even the pro-choice side, where the word abortion, they tried not to say the word abortion. It was reproductive care or reproductive health or reproductive freedom. They are now saying, say abortion. We want to normalize the word abortion. And that, if you look, Ryan, at anything in our culture where there has been a degradation of society, where there has been a pullback of morality or a pullback of standards, that's how it happens. It happens in little bits, little increments, little pieces to try to normalize it. Now, I will say that with the topic of abortion, because so many women who have had abortions have not been given permission to feel the pain of that abortion, because you are hearing through media and through everywhere that it is normal, that it is empowering, all of those words. So for you, when you don't feel empowered, when you don't feel maybe like it was the best thing for you, when you feel like, gosh, I really regret doing that, you're not given permission to feel that way. And so oftentimes what happens with emotions is when we're not able to express them, they turn to something else, right? So like a sadness or a regret, when you're not able to express that or given permission to feel that, what do you do with that emotion? You turn it to anger. And so oftentimes what we are seeing, I believe, is that many of the people, especially with this generation that we have now, that are looking for a reason to live and they are looking for a reason to die. They are looking for a cause to champion and a platform to stand on. We've seen that with the race riots and with all of the different things. They're looking for something to stand for. And so you have that generation who is feeling disconnected, that has lack of interaction with people. They find themselves pregnant. We know how that happens. It's not an accident, but they end up pregnant. They don't know what to do. And here is a huge conglomerate saying, come to us and we will take care of your problem. They come to them to take care of their problem by having an abortion. And they leave not only with their problem taken care of, but with a march to march in, with a platform to stand on, and with a cause to get behind. And because they still feel sadness and shame, that turns into anger. And so that is what we are seeing over and over and over again. And if you look at like a lot of the movie stars who have talked about their abortion experience, which there are countless ones of them, I'm always looking for them. Every one of them, without exception, talks about the sadness, the shame, the regret that they had for a season. And now it's the best thing that ever happened to them. And they're so grateful that they had their abortion and they would do it again if they could. But they talk about that season of sorrow and shame and regret. And so if it was the best thing that ever happened to you, why do you have a season of sorrow, shame, and regret? And so we have to normalize it. It's like, pedophiles want other pedophiles to be normal. People who have eating disorder, you know what I mean? It's like that birds of a feather flock together kind of a thing. And so that is what we are seeing throughout our society is instead of recognizing that, hey, this was a mistake that I shouldn't have done. This was something that I did that I regret that I'm sorry for. Instead of doing that, because that takes self-responsibility and really self-awareness, it's easier for me to go, this is normal, everybody should do it. And that's quite honestly what we're seeing. And Ryan, the men on the other side, unfortunately, if 1 in 4 or 1 in 3 women have had abortions, probably 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 men have participated in an abortion in some way. And I speak to countless men who are dealing with the shame of not only paying for an abortion for a girlfriend, but also the shame that that woman has now had to carry that guilt alone. And oftentimes that woman has never had children, or that man has never had children, and not feeling like they have the ability to say, you know what, these men to say, I did this and I regret it and I am sorry for it, because they've been told it's, her body, her choice. And so it is going across. It's not just a women's issue at all. It is for sure a men's issue. That needs to be talked about and talked about plainly. That's why podcasts like this are important, because people need to know the realities of what's going on.
I think that's what's very interesting to me is we live in this culture where you'll hear people say, mental health is so important. Mental health is so important. We need to make sure that we're mentally strong and so on and so forth. It feels like in our current society that is a strong, predominant push for mental health. But there are aspects that we are blatantly ignoring when it comes to mental health. And naturally, abortion is one of these things that you're talking about, that pain and stuff. I'm curious, when you talk about that sadness, that deep sadness, or that pain, or that rejection, whatever that is, what is something that typically catches both men and women off guard, and they don't know how to emotionally how to deal with that or mentally deal with that? Because I feel like, and I may be wrong, Kelly, I feel like a lot of times if I was talking to somebody that was very much pro-abortion, they would say, oh, I know that, I'm going to deal with this, and that. But there's always that moment that they did not expect. What is something that we're not hearing or we're not fully comprehending when you talk about that pain and that deep sorrow and that sadness?
So I'm going to answer that with a couple of things, Ryan. So I have a lot of conversations with mental health professionals, and it is not anywhere, if you go in to speak with a mental health professional, it will go over different things that may have happened. Have you been abused? Have you suffered with eating disorders or drug addiction or all of these things? Do you know what question is not on there? Have you ever had an abortion? Which is so interesting to me that that's not brought up for therapists and psychiatrists and counselors and mental health professionals. But what makes it somewhat tricky about this is, first off, for those people who have gone through a surgical abortion, statistics show that it takes between 5 to 10 years for you to begin to suffer the effects emotionally from your abortion. Now, that is multiple reasons. One of the main reasons for that is because most people that have a surgical abortion do it under a heavy anesthesia. It's a twilight sedation. And in that sedation, you are awake, but you're not really conscious. They do it for several procedures, sometimes knee surgeries, colonoscopies, different things. They will use that. But in that medication, what it does is it is an amnesiac. So it causes you to forget what happened to you. And so for many people, they will say, well, it wasn't that bad. Well, the reason it wasn't that bad is because they have no memory of the experience, which makes it not that bad. However, 5 years, 10 years down the road, all of that will come out and they will realize it. Now, it can come out in a million different ways. For some people, it's turning to drugs and alcohol. For other people, it is becoming an overachiever, a type A, somebody who is a perfectionist at everything. For some people, they will have makeup babies and they will have other children to try to make up for that lost child. For some people, they don't want any children. If they do have children, they have an inability to connect relationally with that child because if I've killed my child, how do I deserve to be a mother or a father? Sometimes it will result in feeling like when bad things happen to you, they're deserved. So it's like a penance. It's like a punishment. I have a friend who had an abortion, and then many, many, many years later, she lost her child. And she made the statement to me, this is the revenge that I'm getting. This is the revenge that's being put on me because I killed my child. And so, it can show up in eating disorders. And I mean, there's just so many different things that it can show up, that does make it difficult to pinpoint. But I talk to people all the time who talk about an issue that they had. And then when we start talking, I'll ask them, have you ever had an abortion? And when I do, it triggers something in them. And they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize that those could be connected. And then we'll kind of talk through it and realize that they are very much connected. So, people are all so very different that it does manifest in different ways, which makes it difficult sometimes to track.
It's interesting because when you're talking about the mental health, the psychiatrists or therapists, whichever, in the journals don't ever ask the question about having an abortion. Is that something that is just what that side of the medical field has put in the rule book or guidebook, whatever, that they're never going to address this kind of topic?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I've spoken with a lot of them, and it is a very difficult thing to even get added in. And now a lot of the ones that I've spoken with are Christian counselors. And even in that side, it's hard because they don't want to come off of the protocol of what is said or required. And so we've talked through, many of them will even say, have you had a miscarriage, but will not say, have you had an abortion? And so depending on what jurisdiction, because they're regulated by the state and different things, depending on where they are, some have more freedom to do things than others. Obviously, a counselor has a bit more freedom than a therapist, for instance. And so some have added that question to that place right there where it says, have you had a miscarriage? They'll say, have you had an abortion? But it's something that's not asked about because people are, honestly, I don't know why. I mean, the counselors themselves are like, oh, we never thought to ask this. And I'm thinking, how did you not think to ask this? But there is becoming more awareness. A lot of people, with the current state of what's going on with legislation and with Roe versus Wade, you cannot get away from abortion. And so it is in your face all the time. And so a lot of people that for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years have never dealt with it are now being triggered because it's so much in their face with everything that's going on. And so a lot of counselors and therapists are beginning to hear it more because people are going, this is triggering me and I don't know why. And so for that reason, they're looking for help.
It feels very much like a modern don't ask, don't tell.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of from the military standpoint back during the Clinton era, this is what it kind of feels like. If I don't ask about it, you don't have to tell about it. We don't have to go down this road. But it's just kind of heartbreaking to hear because you think, again, the goal is to help people. But, that's neither here nor there because we could go down a whole other road.
But Ryan, you see, let's use that instance for an example. Okay. It used to be don't ask, don't tell. And now it is gay pride. Now it is wear your rainbow stripes on your uniform and let's promote it. And we're proud of it. And in fact, we want to have inclusion classes to make sure that it's there and everybody, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. The same thing is happening with abortion. It used to be, something that was secret, that was private between a woman and her doctor. And now it's wear it loud and proud and be proud about it and shout out your abortion and how many you have had. And so that's a perfect example of how these small incremental changes have led us to where we are.
It really, that is, I've not thought about it in that manner. Such a great point of really comprehending what is blatantly out there for individuals to gravitate to or feel like they're a part of. I want to know, as a father, I have two daughters that are 23 and 21. I have two sons that are 16 and 11. But I have other young men and women in my life, from family to friends. I want you to walk me down, if you can. Let's say that let's just say there's someone in their 20s, mid to late 20s, and they're contemplating on having an abortion, and they make that decision to go to a Planned Parenthood or a facility for women that's really kind of incognito, in disguise. Walk me down exactly that path, because I think a lot of times an overwhelming amount of individuals just do not have an understanding of what exactly is taking place. I mean, I'm going back to all the way in the beginning of this conversation. You talked about adjusting the thermostat to make the waiting room hot. I've never heard that before. That's a first to me. So I can you walk me down what a grown woman, let's take a grown woman, what she's going to face and endure from all the way from point A to the recovery room?
Well, it's going to be very different state by state. And so, different states are going to have different mandates as far as waiting periods, as far as counseling, as far as, can you do it by telemedicine? Do you have to see a doctor? So it is going to vary a little bit state by state. It is also going to vary because the current push is for what's called chemical abortion. It's abortion by pill, called many different things: missed period pill, RU46, the abortion pill. And that is what is really being pushed across our country. 58% of women who had abortions last year had an abortion this way. And I can tell you, as someone who has had two first trimester, a second trimester, and one by pill, the pill was my most traumatic of all of them. So we'll go to that one next, but let's talk about what you're thinking of as a typical surgical abortion. And I'm going to give you the more strict states, which honestly, most of the states that had these kind of parameters are now abortion free. And so this is going to be kind of, it's hard to tell, but we'll start with this. So what you would do is you would make an appointment. On your appointment, they would find out your gestational age. If you are over 10 weeks, they will recommend a surgical abortion. You would then come in for your initial appointment. Now, COVID has changed things dramatically for a lot of areas. Where you used to be able to come in with a guest, many places do not allow you to come in with anybody. And so they are isolating you from the very get-go that you are coming in alone. They also, many locations have started taking people's cell phones, because there are sidewalk advocates and people outside of the facility that are giving resources, that are giving answers, that are giving text lines, and they don't want women sitting in the waiting room texting these lines and getting help. So oftentimes they will take your cell phone. So you come in for that first appointment, and it's going to vary state by state as to what they're going to do. They may do an ultrasound. They may not. They may show you a video of what it's very basic on what the procedure is. They may just hand you a piece of paper that has a bunch of lines that go through the procedure, and you sign it that you agree. You may sit down with a counselor and discuss it. Depending on the state, you may not. Your entire consultation may just be with a receptionist, like I was, handing you a piece of paper and asking you to sign it. So they're not going to talk to you about your goals. They're not going to talk to you about, what are you thinking? What are you feeling? Why are you wanting to have this abortion? They will then take payment, and then depending again on the location, you may do the procedure that day, or you may have to wait 24 up to 72 hours. I'm not sure how many states are left with the 72-hour waiting period, because I think most of those have become abortion free. So then you would come back or go ahead and have your procedure that day. Now, on abortion days, The goal is to have the women in the waiting room, or not in the waiting room, I'm sorry, in the procedure rooms lined up. So you'll have 1 and 1, 1 and 2, 1 and 3, 1 and 4, 1 and 5, all the way down for as many rooms as you have, prepared for their procedure. So in the gown, in the stirrups, ready to go. The doctor comes in and does the procedure, walks out, washes his hands, goes in the next room, does the procedure, walks out, washes his hands, on down the line. The goal is to have the doctor in and out in under 6 minutes. There is at no point a conversation with the doctor. There is no point of opportunity to ask questions to the doctor because time is money. So we have to be in and out as quickly as possible. All the women are then escorted one by one to a recovery room where you will stay for approximately 20 minutes. At the end of that 20 minutes, you are handed a bag with your clothes, you are handed a cookie, you are handed juice. If you have chosen birth control, you are handed your birth control. You are escorted to the bathroom to change, and you are released. It used to be mandated for a follow-up appointment. And so while we never did, I think in the entire time I was in the clinic, I don't remember ever doing a follow-up appointment because we don't make money off follow-up appointments. And most women don't want to come back. You know what I mean? It's like out of sight, out of mind. But it is now no longer required for you to have a follow-up appointment. And so you go home and we hope that everything's okay. So that is a surgical abortion. The chemical abortion, quite honestly, is far more scary and far more dangerous. The majority of women who are getting the chemical abortion, they are doing a virtual call just like me and you. And you are, let's say you're the patient and I'm the doctor, and I'm going to ask you what the date of your last menstrual cycle is. You're going to tell me. I'm going to calculate if you are under the 9 weeks and 5 days. Then I will mail you your medication. You take the first set of pills, and then 24 to 48 hours later, you take the second set of pills. The first set of pills blocks the progesterone that goes to your baby, so it starves the baby, kills the baby. And then you take the second set of pills that cause you to gently empty the uterus. I can tell you there's nothing gentle about it. It is a full-on labor. You are having a labor in your home. Now, best case scenario, you are between the 7 to 9 week period, which is what it is FDA reported for you to have this. Worst case scenario, you haven't had a good track of your period, or you've lied because you know that you need to be in that window to have it. And so you're 11 weeks or 14 weeks or 16 weeks, and you are having that abortion in your home by yourself without the care of a doctor. And nowhere is it mandated I say that on the flyer, the drug information of the pills that you take, it does say that you should have an ultrasound before to determine gestational age. And it does say that you should return to your provider 7 to 14 days for another ultrasound to make sure that your uterus is clear. They are not suggesting that you do this. What they are saying is that if you have a complication, go to the emergency room and tell them that you have had a miscarriage, and they will treat you for a miscarriage. And so the scary thing is that our abortion provider is now not on the corner in the bad part of town. It is your high school. It is your upstairs bathroom. It is your church bathroom. It is anywhere where there's a bathroom. Your abortion provider is now your mailman, your pharmacist, and it is happening across the country. We got Abby Johnson, who is my boss, contacted India because there's all these websites that you can go and look and get pills through the mail for $250. One of them was in India. She talked to the people in India and they said, so how far along are you? She said, and she figured out to make it 9 weeks and 5 days. And they said, okay, great. That's fine. How old are you? She said, I'm 18. Do you have an ID? She said, well, no, I don't have an ID. They said, okay, what we need you to do is take a picture of yourself and write your birthday on that picture so that we can make sure that you're 18. She said, okay, great. They said, send us $400 and we will send you the pills in the mail. They will be there in 4 to 6 weeks. So if she was 10 weeks gestation in 4 to 6 weeks, where does that put her?
Yeah.
And so it is terrifying what we are going to be seeing. It's terrifying.
I'm really blown away by that information because my mind automatically goes, okay, this takes all the responsibility off the medical teams
Hmm.
and 100% on the individual taking uh, that type of pill in that
Hmm.
manner. Uh, and my mind goes the trauma to the
Hmm.
body and the trauma to the mind has absolutely got to be horrific. But I think what really astonishes me more than anything is they are recommending you go to the hospital and say, I had a miscarriage.
Yeah.
This
Which,
is, go ahead.
which is so, you keep hearing in the abortion discussion where they're talking about women are going to be prosecuted for having miscarriages, right? Where they talk about a D&C after a miscarriage. You're not going to be able to do that anymore, which there is no law anywhere that states that. But what that does is that scares women, because if I go to the emergency room and tell them that I'm having a miscarriage, am I going to be prosecuted? And so it keeps, because the abortion industry knows that all of a sudden there's going to be all these women going to the emergency room having bad miscarriages. They are not idiots. I mean, they are a lot of things, but they are not stupid. And so to get ahead of that, they have put out this propaganda so that women are now afraid to even go to the emergency room or to their OBGYN to tell them that they're having a miscarriage. And it's interesting, Ryan, because it's between a woman and her doctor, right? Where is this between a woman and her doctor? And you're talking about it takes the responsibility off the medical profession and puts it on her. So when that happens, I have to be okay with having an abortion. So in order to be okay with having an abortion, we must normalize it and make it a normal rite of passage for women to have an abortion. And the trauma, you talked about the trauma where it used to be, I said it was 5 to 10 years for women to begin to feel the repercussions of having a surgical abortion. It's now 3 to 5 days after a chemical abortion. Women are showing up at pregnancy resource centers with their baby in their hand and saying, what do I do with this? Now, the trauma, you talk about the trauma of all of mine. The trauma from my chemical abortion was the most. I had to move because I was returning to the scene of the crime every time I went to the bathroom. And so I had to move. So yes, it is all around absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Oh, good grief. This is like next level manipulation.
Yeah.
And it's why it is so important for us as individuals. But I'm going to carry this a little bit further into those that are sons and daughters of God. You've got to take the time to have these conversations with people. You got to take the time to find the resources, the material, the information, anything that we can do to share that information with individuals. There's always going to be those. You talked about how they turned it into anger. It does feel like you can't have a rational conversation with some that are very much pro-abortion. They scream, they holler, they yell, they do all this stuff. So I definitely feel that a lot of them have turned it into anger. But there are those like yourself who have this moment of a realization that I'm not a mistake. I'm not an accident. I'm not an error. God truly does love me. And so what I want you to do, Kelly, if you can, for those that are watching and listening and they've possibly been down this road or they've encouraged someone else to go down this road or they participated, whatever, what truly is the key to bring some kind of healing into their life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the first thing is you have to forgive yourself. You have to realize that while abortion is horrible and it is a terrible thing, it is not an unpardonable sin. There is hope and there is healing. The Lord loves you. Jesus died for you and died for you to live whole and free. And so, the first thing that you have to do is you have to repent and just, ask for forgiveness for it and forgive yourself and forgive the doctors or the boyfriend or, whoever else was involved, and get healing. There are lots of great healing programs for women and men who are post-abortive out there. Do it. Do the work. I mean, it may seem like, I talk to people all the time, oh, I'm saved, I'm good, I'm fine. And they're not. Something will happen that triggers them. So spend the time digging into that, going into that, and getting the healing from it. And know that you are loved by God, and He sees you, He loves you, He forgives. When you ask for forgiveness, He is quick to forgive us. And that it doesn't have to be this badge of shame that you wear forever. It doesn't have to be this thing that you're carrying. And there are people out there who need you to be free, who need you to be healed, who need you to be whole, so that they can get freedom and healing and wholeness. Freed people, free people. And so, I think in our churches, that's one of the big things that we don't have a lot of people talking about it, because a lot of people in leadership are suffering with their own shame. And so that's one of my goals, is to talk to people about getting healing into the churches and getting healing into the communities, because we need to have this discussion and realize that, yes, it was wrong, and yes, it was bad, and yes, it was horrible, and yes, there's shame and regret and sorrow and all of these things, but God loves you and forgives you and wants better things for you.
Kelly, one of the things I do, and I try to give every guest an opportunity, is to have that last word, that final thought. Maybe there was a question that I could have asked, but I didn't get to. Maybe there was something that is on your heart to share with other people, that inside information, whatever the case may be. Maybe we covered everything that we could possibly cover. I don't feel like we did. I feel like we could be on here for hours, kind of, breaking apart so much of this information and stuff. But I want to give you an opportunity to share any last word or final thought, something that you feel like is very important for those that are watching or listening to this episode.
Yeah, I think, Ryan, the thing is, now is the time. As the church, many have been waiting for the overturning of Roe versus Wade and thinking that when that happened, abortion was just going to miraculously go away. And it's not. It's not going away. It's not even necessarily decreasing. It's just becoming underground. And like we talked about earlier with the chemical abortion. So get involved, find out information about abortion. Live Action has some great videos where they show in a way that's not disgusting, where I'm not talking about dismembered baby parts and things like that, but in a way that will be educational. Dr. Levatino, who is a former abortion doctor, helped them produce it. Be informed, be educated in what is going on in the abortion industry, and connect with local resources in your area. Connect with your pregnancy resource center, connect with your maternity home, connect with your sidewalk advocates for life organization. Be a voice, be the ones to help those women, because I can tell you 78% of women have an abortion because of financial reasons. They need someone sitting there saying, hey, we'll help you. Not we'll take your baby, which, although I know well-meaning people say that, these women want to be mothers, some of them. They just don't know how to do it. And so find ways to plug in with your community. Find ways to help locally. Find ways to help, regionally. Vote. For goodness sake, vote, 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 vote. A million times vote, because it does make a difference. Nowadays, with Roe versus Wade, it's going down to the states. So we are going to see some states that outlaw abortion, and we're going to see some states where abortion is a destination. It's a destination location. And so they call it abortion tourism. So make sure that you are voting, but get involved. We are no longer in a place where we can sit on the sidelines and say, oh, that's a terrible thing. I hope somebody does it. We have to be active and doing something. Embrace Grace is a great program that you can bring to your churches that helps single moms. Making Life Disciples is a great program that will teach your church about abortion. ProLove Ministries that I work for, we have a range of organizations that help people with different things. Sidewalk Advocates for Life. There's a lot of great things out there that need help and need support. And so connect and join what's going on.
I absolutely appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this episode and sharing not only your personal journey, but so much information. Again, how can people learn about ProLove Ministries?
So if you go to ProLove.com, That will take you to 2 landing pages. One is ProLoveMinistries.org. We are a ministry that tries to be an umbrella for the pro-life movement. So we have lots of other ministries that do different things, and we have a crisis line called LoveLine. So it is a 24-hour hotline where women in crisis contact us. We connect her with local resources. If we can't find those, we become that resource. The other landing page that you will see is abortionworker.com. That is for And Then There Were None. And that is a ministry very specifically to get abortion workers out of the abortion industry. We know when abortion workers leave, the facilities close. We have over 600 workers that have left, 7 doctors that have laid down their instruments, and 27 clinics that have closed because of our work. So those are 2 of the ministries that I work for.
And again, Kelly, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I appreciate you sharing your heart, the information, the insight, the websites that people can be a part of. Out of curiosity, are you on any of the social media outlets as well that people can connect with you?
Yeah, so I have a speakers page. It's Kelly Lester Speaker on Facebook. And I'm on Instagram. It's Mama Kelly Lester is my Instagram handle. But yeah, I would love to connect. And and you can see where I'm at. I'm traveling. I'm leaving tomorrow to go to New York. So I'm all over the country over the next couple of weeks speaking and sharing. So would love to connect with anybody who's where I'm at.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate the time.
For everyone else, I genuinely hope and pray that this episode has encouraged you, it has equipped you, and it has challenged you to further advance the kingdom of God. Like all of our episodes, I ask that you would share this information, share the YouTube link, share the podcast links, leave us comments, questions, send us a message on any of the podcast outlets, platforms, YouTube, send us an email, check out all the websites that have been mentioned, share. That's how we get the word out and get everything going. So again, we love you guys and we bless you in the name of Jesus.
Thank you for listening to the Blacksmith Chronicles podcast. It is our prayer that this episode challenged you, encouraged you, and equipped you for the advancement of the kingdom of God. For more episodes or ways that you can partner with Ryan Ansanm Ministries, please go to www.ryanjohnson.us or email us directly at info@ryanjohnson.us. Please join us again soon for another episode of the Blacksmith Chronicles.